Dang it. Hi, Bob Canote, Camcast Chronicles, and today we've got the first in a series of yet unnamed episodes whereby as I'm working in the shop I rip off a quick low quality video just to give you some insight as to what I'm doing or what I'm thinking, things that have to do with the operations around here at Camp Chaos. Now what you see before you is a 35-year-old 50-inch John Deere lawnmower deck. Now this thing has been crippling for years. I've got a number of patches on it, and finally the one that occurred or was necessary at the end of the year last fall to get the final mowing done in 2018, that was enough. It was time to renovate the mower. So what I did is I cut out this center section right here, replaced it with 12-gauge steel, re-welded the mounts back on it. This whole section out here, which is where they all get beat up over time, and it was just basically paper thin in many places. I cut out everything from here around to here, formed the metal, welded it up, and welded in a 3/8 inch round piece of reinforcing rod. Now, you would be forgiven if you were to ask, it's a lawnmower, what does it have to do with the car channel? Okay. Well, it's not actually the mower that's the issue of this video. The subject is this side. And this black substance that you see on the bottom side of the deck. Now the black slick looking finish that you see in the bottom of this lawnmower deck is a product called POR-15 rust preventive paint. This stuff I've been using for years, and it's always done a really good job. Now the purpose of it is to, first of all, bond to rust that is left on the surface of the article that you're coating. And the fact is it wants to have a little rust there to grab onto. In lieu of that, a sandblasted surface works great. On the bottom of this lawnmower deck, at the end of last season, there was a fairly good sized buildup of grass, which I had to remove. But underneath it, as you can see by the very uneven reflection that you see on the surface of the lawnmower deck here, I took a needle scaler and knocked off all the loose rust. And what was a relatively smooth surface before now became more of a topographical map. And in some places, it even knocked through the surface of the metal. So what I had to do first of all is to fix the obvious holes and then go ahead and take a wire brush and do everything that I could to get down to bare metal, bare rusty metal. And that required knocking out a lot of rust from the surface. You need to get rid of the surface rust and the dirt and that sort of thing. So I had a fairly clean surface, and at that point then I put 2 coats of POR-15 on, and in between coats it takes about 3 hours in order for it to set up. You don't want it to set up all the way. What you want to be able to do is take your finger, drag it across the surface, and you'll get a draggy sound. You don't want it to come off on your finger, but what you want to feel is finger drag. At that point, it's still wet enough where you can put the second coat on and have it adhere. If you don't do that, if you wait for it to cure, what happens is it can't grab a hold of this super slick surface and it eventually flakes off, which is not what you did this for in the first place. Some of the suspension components on the bottom of my XJS track car, we're done with this paint, and I've taken a couple of high-speed trips through gravel track at BIR and Road America, and it'll knock the surface coating off, but it won't knock the POR-15. What they recommend that you do, once you get the second or third or however many coats you're putting on, and you get to that finger drag point, you can then shoot some sort of a top coat, and that can be any rattle can paint onto this, and it'll grab a hold of it. You really need to do that in situations that are going to be out in the open because it does degrade with ultraviolet light. This being the bottom of the lawnmower, and it's probably going to get a coating of grass, wet grass on it right away, probably not a big deal. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this all together, paint up the outside, get it on the mower, use it during the entire 2019 season, and then at the end of the season we're going to take it apart, pressure wash the bottom, and take a look and see how this stuff does. And given the environment, sticks and stones and wet grass and all the really negative stuff that you can impart to a steel piece, this is going to be subject to, and we'll see how it works. I'm not getting anything from POR-15 to do this, so this is just strictly for your information, and I hope you'll find it useful. Well, here we are a year later on the POR-15 Lawnmower Deck Challenge, and I'm getting the lawnmower deck that I had renovated last year up and running again and maintained for this mowing season. Turns out that the POR-15 that I had brushed on the bottom of this last year, for the most part, has actually come off. Now, when I just taken a rotary wire brush to it and cleaned the grass and other debris off of it, it looked pretty good. Then I took it to the pressure washer and hit it with about 3,000 psi, and it came off in sheets. And I wish I had a piece of this stuff around, but you can see right here that although this is interesting right here. Here it's coming off, but right here, this stuff is on rock solid. So what that tells me is that it's a surface preparation problem. Now, I remember it last year, I think what I did is just scuffed up the surface real well and brushed it on. It's actually a three-step process. First of all, a marine clean product, which you use to get all the oil and grease off of it. And then there's a metal prep, which is an etching stage product that you put on it and let it etch for a while and then wash it off. And then you brush or spray the POR-15 on. So I'm going to do this again, going to give it another shot, and hopefully with better surface preparation, the outcome will be different. Now, I got to say that even though most of this material came off, the metal underneath it was pretty clean. Here we are after the prep has been done prior to putting on the POR-15, and I've really taken some care this time to get all the loose rust and POR-15 off and get it really, really clean. I've done the marine clean very, very thoroughly, and the metal prep, which is the etching step, just really made an effort, a bit more than I did last time, to get this surface prep right. I was kind of under the gun last time to get my lawn mowed because I was kind of behind schedule because of all the things I'd been doing at that time. So, ready to go. Taking the opportunity to make a few repairs. There's some holes that I missed when I welded up the deck last year. And what I'm using is a POR-15 epoxy 2-part resin filler that sets up hard as a rock. And what I've done here, I mixed up a little more than I really needed. This is an area of the deck that the pitting was very, very heavy, and some pits looked like they were about ready to go through. So I mixed up some of this stuff. We're going to do a little experimentation. Once this sets up, I'm going to sand it flat and paint over the top of this. So got some issues with this thing, but you know, if it goes another 5 years, it'll be worth all this hassle. Well, this is the 2021 edition of the POR-15 Lawnmower Challenge product review, and I haven't actually looked at the bottom of this thing yet to see what it looks like. Now, as you recall, this began in 2019 when I had replaced and reconstructed this part of the lawnmower here and also the middle up front, where these things get beat up pretty badly, and decided that I was going to try to preserve this as much as possible. And part of that plan was to coat the bottom side with POR-15, which I've had really, really good luck with on the cars that I've used it on, mainly suspension parts and also areas that have surface rust on them, and I want to prevent that rust from going any further. So been pleased in that regard, but this is kind of the acid test. Let's see what this thing looks like after we get it cleaned up. Right away I can tell you there's a big difference in one particular sense over last year, and that is that the finish, the POR-15 finish, although you can see in several spots it's been kind of sandblasted away, it's still hung in there in a lot of other places.
And the fact is that up here in these areas, up in these corners, typically there's a huge buildup of grass, and you can see that it's almost not existent this year, and that's pretty incredible.
As you can see, the POR-15 is pretty much gone. There are some spots where there's not a whole lot of abrasion, but for the most part it's all gone. In fact, I would say that the adhesion was not any better doing the full marine clean metal prep according to the instructions than there was simply just knocking all the rust off and just painting over the top of it. Now, it must be said that this is probably a trial that this stuff and any other paint other than maybe ceramic coating might actually be better, but you know what this has really done, I think, is preserved to a great extent the metal that was already here. It's probably rusted a little bit more, but the master plan was kind of make this thing last another 5 years, and it's been 2. This will be 3. Well, there it is. Didn't work out as I had hoped, but you know, actually in some respects it did a reasonably good job. This may have been kind of a big ask for any paint to actually do, because we have a lawn that borders agricultural land and there's dirt clods that get kicked up on that, and we also mowed right down to the road where there's a lot of sand and gravel and other debris that gets kicked off onto the shoulder and onto the lawn. So, you know, I think it's worth doing simply because it slows down the rust out process that is inevitable on something like this. So it'll work to keep this deck going for the foreseeable future, which around here is forever. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, and leave some comments down below so that we can know what we can do to do better. So we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicle.